Forget what you think you know about Europe. Forget the polished capitals and the well-trodden tourist trails. Imagine a country that, in living memory, declared war on God himself, banning every church and mosque. A country that, crippled by a self-imposed paranoia, built over 173,000 concrete bunkers, one for every 11 citizens, dotting its landscape like post-apocalyptic mushrooms. This isn't a relic of the ancient world. This is Albania. Today, it's a nation wrestling with its ghosts, a place of profound contradictions, where vibrant new beginnings are painted directly over the deep, gray scars of the past. This isn't just a trip, it's an investigation. We're not here to just see the sights. We're here to understand the soul of a nation that survived the impossible. So, are you ready to uncover the real Albania? Your journey into the Albanian psyche begins here, in the capital, Tirana. And at first, it makes no sense. The city feels like a paradox in frantic motion. On one street, you'll find stern, gray, communist-era apartment blocks, their brutalist lines a stark and unyielding reminder of a disciplined past where individuality was a crime. But turn a corner, and those same buildings explode in a defiant riot of color. Bright orange, lime green, psychedelic purple, abstract patterns that seem to mock the uniformity they cover. This wasn't a spontaneous act of rebellion. It was a deliberate mayoral project in the early 2000s led by Edi Rama, an artist before he was a politician, and now the country's prime minister. His theory was simple yet profound in a city financially broke and spiritually broken. Color was a cheap and potent form of therapy. It was a declaration that the era of gray was over, a cosmetic fix perhaps, but one that undeniably lifted the city's spirit and signaled that change was not just possible, but happening. At the heart of it all is Skanderbeg Square, a vast, open plaza paved with stones from every corner of the Albanian-speaking world. It slopes gently upwards to a monumental statue of the nation's 15th-century hero, a symbol of resistance against the Ottomans. This is the official heart of Albania, the carefully curated stage for national celebrations. But just a short walk away lies the city's unofficial, and far more controversial, part, the Pyramid of Tirana. This colossal, decaying structure of marble and glass was built in 1988 as a museum to glorify the dictator Enver Hoxha, who had died 3 years prior. It was a monument designed by his own daughter and son-in-law to ensure his legacy would be eternal. After communism fell in 1991, its fate became a reflection of the country's own identity crisis. It was briefly a nightclub, a conference center, a NATO base during the Kosovo War, and then, for a generation of Albanian youth, a derelict playground. It became a rite of passage to climb its treacherous, graffiti-covered slopes and slide down, a dangerous act of reclaiming a symbol of oppression for youthful joy. Today, it's being transformed again, its skeleton wrapped in a new, glittering shell of steel and glass, becoming a state-of-the-art IT hub for young people. A monument to a totalitarian dictator is being repurposed to build a digital future he would have never allowed. This single building is the perfect, complicated metaphor for Albania, a constant, often painful, negotiation between forgetting a traumatic past and building a hopeful future upon its very ruins. But to understand why this pyramid even exists, and why its identity is so violently contested, you have to understand the ghost that still haunts this nation, the man it was built for. To understand modern Albania, you must journey into the darkness of its 20th century history. For 41 years, from the end of World War II until his death in 1985, Enver Hoxha ruled with an iron fist. He wasn't a foreign, imposed ruler. He was a charismatic partisan leader who liberated Albania from Nazi occupation, and for that, he was initially revered as a hero. In the early years, his achievements seemed miraculous for a feudal, impoverished nation. He dramatically increased the country's literacy rate from a shocking 5% to over 90%, built the nation's first railways, and eradicated malaria. On paper, these are the accomplishments of a great nation builder. But the price for this progress was absolute submission, and the method was terror. Hoxha was a Stalinist of the most extreme kind, possessed by a deep, corrosive paranoia that grew with every passing year. After breaking ties with his former allies, first Yugoslavia, then the Soviet Union, and finally his only remaining patron, China, he plunged Albania into a state of total, hermetic isolation, more sealed off from the world than even North Korea is today. He convinced his people that the entire world, the American imperialists, the Soviet revisionists, the Yugoslav chauvinists, was plotting to invade their tiny socialist paradise. And his solution was the bunkerization program. These concrete domes are everywhere. They erupt from pristine beaches, stand guard on remote mountainsides, sprout from the middle of cemeteries, and sit in the backyards of family homes. They were never used in a war. They were a colossal waste of concrete and labor that crippled an already fragile economy. But their true purpose wasn't military. It was psychological. They were a daily, physical reminder that the enemy was always at the gates, that the world was hostile, and that only the party and the leader could protect you. It was a national psychosis made concrete. Life under this siege mentality was a gray nightmare. The secret police, the dreaded Sigurimi, had an informant network so vast it was estimated 1 in 3 citizens worked for them. A misplaced joke: listening to an Italian radio station, owning a Beatles record, or even having a typewriter without a license could lead to a long sentence in a brutal labor camp. But Hoxha's most audacious and defining act was his war on faith. In 1967, he officially declared Albania the world's first and only atheist state. It wasn't a policy of secularism, it was an eradication. Priests and imams were executed, imprisoned, or sent to work in mines. Over 100 churches, mosques, and ancient monasteries were systematically demolished or repurposed into warehouses, cinemas, or sports halls. For 24 years, an entire generation grew up having never seen a Bible or a Quran, never heard a church bell or the adhan. God was illegal. The best way to feel this history today is to descend into one of the very tunnels built to protect the regime from the apocalypse it imagined. Bunkart 1, on the outskirts of Tirana, is a massive, 5-story underground palace with 106 rooms, built for Hoxha and his inner circle in case of a nuclear attack. Walking through its cold, sterile corridors, you see the dictator's surprisingly modest suite, the advanced communications room, and chilling exhibits on the history of the Sigurimi, complete with listening devices and interrogation files. It's not just a museum, it's a descent into the mind of a tyrant, a claustrophobic journey that makes you understand how one man's paranoia could imprison an entire nation, both physically and mentally. When the Berlin Wall fell and communism finally collapsed across Eastern Europe, Albania was the last domino to topple in 1991. Albanians blinked in the sunlight of a world they didn't know. Freedom had arrived, but so had utter chaos. The governance vacuum, mentioned in travelogues, was, in reality, a national catastrophe. Decades of being told what to do, what to think, and where to work had left the population utterly unprepared for the ruthless logic of capitalism. And into this vacuum of naivety and desperation stepped the vultures. In the mid-1990s, the country was swept by a national frenzy of pyramid schemes. These weren't small, time scams. They were massive operations with patriotic names, operating out of shiny offices and endorsed, implicitly or explicitly, by politicians. They promised ludicrous monthly returns of 10%, 20%, sometimes even 100%, in a country with zero financial literacy, where the concept of a stock market was alien. It seemed like magic. It felt like a shortcut to the Western prosperity they had only seen on forbidden Italian television. People sold their homes, their ancestral lands, their livestock, their life savings, and poured it all into these schemes. At their peak, these schemes held an amount of money equivalent to half the country's GDP. Then, in 1997, the inevitable happened. The pyramids collapsed. In an instant, 2/3 of the population lost everything. The national rage was explosive and immediate. This wasn't a stock market crash, it was a profound, personal betrayal. People took to the streets, not just to protest, but to storm and loot military armories. Over 650,000 weapons, from Kalashnikovs to tanks, flooded the country. Albania descended into anarchy and a near civil war. The government fell. The country was lawless. Rival gangs armed with military-grade hardware controlled entire cities, and over 2,000 people were killed in the chaos. An international peacekeeping force, led by Italy, had to intervene to restore order. This trauma, the anarchy of 1997, coming so soon after the collective trauma of communism, is the key to understanding modern Albania. It explains the deep-seated distrust in institutions, both financial and political. It explains the massive wave of emigration in the late 90s and early 2000s, as anyone who could leave did, often on rickety, overcrowded boats across the Adriatic to Italy. It created the missing generation of middle-aged people you notice today, leaving a society composed largely of the very young and the very old. And it explains why, even today, progress feels fragile, and why the shadow of the past looms so large. But Albania's complex story didn't begin with communism. To understand its people, you have to peel back even more layers of history. For nearly 500 years, this land was a crucial part of the Ottoman Empire, and that legacy is baked into the very fabric of daily life. You see it in the elegant, slender minarets that grace the skylines of ancient cities like Berat and Gjirokastër. You taste it in the food. The flaky, savory pastry called bajrak, sold on every street corner, is a direct culinary descendant. The rich, hearty stew of tav kosi, baked lamb in a tangy yogurt sauce, is a national treasure with Ottoman roots. And you feel it in the religious makeup, with about half the population having a Muslim background. Yet, as you walk the streets of Tirana, the vibe feels distinctly Italian. The fashion is sharp, the obsession with espresso is a near religion, and the evening ritual of the Siro, a leisurely walk to see and be seen, feels like something straight out of Rome or Milan. This isn't just a modern trend. Italy's influence, from its brief and brutal occupation in WWI to its cultural dominance via television during the communist era, is profound. For decades, Italian RAI television was the only window to the outside world, a cultural Trojan horse that beamed images of prosperity, fashion, and freedom into isolated Albanian homes. Many older Albanians learned fluent Italian this way. This explains the fascinating phenomenon of Albanians passionately following Italian football leagues like Serie A, often with more fervor than their own national teams. So, are Albanians Eastern or Western? Balkan or Mediterranean? The answer is a defiant yes to all of the above. Their language itself is a testament to this, a unique, ancient branch on the Indo-European tree, influenced by Latin, Greek, Slavic, and Turkish, yet fiercely distinct. But perhaps the most defining Albanian trait, something that has survived all empires and ideologies, is the concept of visa. Visa is more than just a word. It's a sacred code of honor, a promise that is more binding than any written contract. It means to keep the promise. But its deepest meaning relates to an unwavering commitment to hospitality and protecting a guest, even at the cost of one's own life. It was because of Besa that during World War II, a nation of predominantly Muslim Albanians became one of the only countries in Europe to have a larger Jewish population after the war than before it. They refused to hand over a single Jewish citizen to the occupying Nazis and hid thousands of Jewish refugees from across Europe in their homes, seeing it not as an act of heroism, but as a simple, non-negotiable duty dictated by their ancient code. This deep cultural foundation is the bedrock of the warmth and generosity that so many visitors find so surprising today. For too long, the story of Albania has been confined to its troubled politics and its concrete capital. But to do that is to miss the point of this country entirely. Albania, or Shqip Rai as its people call it, means land of the eagles. And to understand why, you must escape the city and go to the mountains. Head north to the accursed mountains, a dramatic name that belies their breathtaking beauty. This is the realm of the Albanian Alps. Here, the legendary trek from the village of Theth to Valbona takes you through scenery that rivals anything in Switzerland or the Dolomites. Jagged limestone peaks that tear at the sky, lush green valleys dotted with stone houses, and crystal-clear streams. It's a world away from the chaos of Tirana, a place of profound peace and raw, untamed nature. The journey there is an adventure in itself, often involving a spectacular 3-hour ferry ride across the fjord, like Komen Lake, a man-made reservoir that created a turquoise snake winding through sheer, dramatic cliffs. Or travel south, back in time, to Berat, the City of 1,000 Windows, a stunning UNESCO World Heritage Site. Here, white Ottoman houses appear to be stacked on top of each other, their dark, square windows staring out like 1,000 eyes from the hillside of the Mangalam Quarter. Cross the old stone bridge to the Gorica Quarter and look back for the iconic view. Then climb to its ancient Kala, or citadel, a living fortress where people still reside today, amidst the ruins of Byzantine churches and Ottoman mosques. Then continue to Gjirokastar, the City of Stone, another UNESCO site and the birthplace of both Enver Hoxha and Albania's greatest writer, Ismail Kadar, a city that produced both the nation's tormentor and its chief interpreter. Its unique, slate-roofed stone houses, dominated by a formidable castle that was once a notorious political prison, create a landscape that is severe, dramatic, and unforgettable. Walking its steep, polished limestone streets feels like stepping into another century. And then there is the coast. The Albanian Riviera is Europe's last wild shore. From the bustling port of Vlora down to the sun-drenched beaches of Saranda, with the magnificent ancient Greek and Roman ruins of Butrint, a third UNESCO site. Just a stone's throw from the Greek island of Corfu, this is a coastline of stunning turquoise waters and golden sands that for decades was hidden behind an iron curtain. It's no longer a secret, but it still retains a raw energy and pockets of untouched beauty that have been lost elsewhere in the overdeveloped Mediterranean. This is the other Albania. Ancient, beautiful, and epic in scale. Back in Tirana, the economic reality for most Albanians is a daily struggle. The official average monthly salary hovers around 600, yet the cost of living, particularly for housing in the capital, is surprisingly high. Rent for a basic apartment can easily consume 400 of that, making it a constant challenge to get by. This immense economic pressure is the primary driver of the modern brain drain. Young, educated Albanians, often fluent in multiple languages, see their future abroad. In Germany, Italy, or the UK, where their skills are better rewarded. This has led some outsiders to the lazy and offensive conclusion that Albanians are not hardworking. The truth is the exact opposite. They are a nation of hustlers and survivors, a people who have had to be endlessly resourceful to endure generations of hardship. You see this energy in the vibrant cafe culture, the burgeoning startup scene in Tirana's repurposed buildings, and the fierce entrepreneurial spirit that built the country back from the ashes of 1997. And their global impact completely belies their small numbers. The next time you listen to global pop music, consider this: Dua Lipa, Rita Ora, Baby Rexha of Max. All are global superstars of Albanian descent. They are the new face of Albania, projecting an image of cool, confident, creative success onto the world stage, a powerful counter-narrative to the old stories of poverty and isolation. In literature, Ismail Kader is a giant, a perennial Nobel Prize candidate whose novels have dissected the Albanian soul for a global audience. These are not exceptions, they are proof of a deep well of talent and ambition, often cultivated in the diaspora created by the country's turbulent past. Today, Albania is an official candidate for the European Union. This ambition is the engine driving the country forward. It forces difficult, but necessary political and judicial reforms, fuels the fight against a still, entrenched culture of corruption, and provides a clear, unifying goal for the future. The road is long and difficult, but for the first time in its modern history, Albania is not isolated. It is looking outwards, eager to take its place in Europe, not as a charity case, but as a proud and resilient partner with a unique and valuable story to tell. Perhaps the most miraculous story of all in Albania is the return of faith. After a quarter-century of scientifically enforced atheism, where the state tried to excise God from the human heart, you might expect a society scarred by religious division, bitterness, or cynical indifference. Instead, you find something extraordinary and profoundly moving: harmony. In any major Albanian city, you can stand in one spot and hear the melodic Islamic call to prayer from a minaret, soon followed by the resonant ringing of bells from a nearby Orthodox or Catholic church. It's not a sound of conflict or competition, but the normal, accepted soundtrack of daily life. This tolerance runs deeper than just polite coexistence. It's woven into the fabric of families. It's common to find families with both Christian and Muslim members, living under the same roof, celebrating both Eid and Christmas together. A Christian mother might fast for the last day of Ramadan in solidarity with her Muslim daughter-in-law. A Muslim family will happily attend the Easter celebrations of their Christian neighbors. Having endured a regime that tried to destroy all faith, Albanians seem to have emerged with a profound lived-in understanding that what unites them, their language, their culture, their besa, their shared history of struggle, is far more important than what divides them. Their shared identity as Albanians trumps any religious label. In a world so often torn apart by religious strife, this small Balkan nation offers a quiet, powerful, and deeply necessary lesson in humanity. So, we return to Tirana, to its colorful buildings and its repurposed pyramid. It's no longer a confusing puzzle. It's a living, breathing museum of resilience. Albania is a country that has been to the edge of the abyss. Through centuries of Ottoman rule, the brutal isolation of a dictator's madness, and the complete chaos of economic collapse, and has clawed its way back. It is a story of a people who had their history, their property, and even their God taken from them, yet never lost their core identity, their besa, their unbreakable spirit. It teaches us that a nation's character is not defined by its darkest moments, but by how it chooses, day after day, to step back into the light. What part of Albania's complex and powerful story surprised you the most? Share your thoughts or any questions you have in the comments below. If this journey opened up a new perspective for you, please share this video with a fellow traveler who loves to dig deeper than the surface. Subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating and misunderstood places. And if you're curious about another nation forged in the crucible of history, check out our video on Bosnia and Herzegovina right here. Thank you for exploring with us.